Go to any public space today, a train station, a restaurant, a park, a gathering that 10 years ago would have been alive with noise and warmth and people actually being with each other. Stand there. Look around. The bodies are present. The people are not. Everyone is near each other. Almost nobody is with each other. They are sealed behind screens, locked inside something invisible, physically close, and humanly nowhere. A room full of people in which no one is actually in the room. Try something. Say hello to someone as they pass. Watch what happens. Most of them will look at you the way you would look at someone speaking a language you have never heard. Confusion, suspicion, a slight shift away from you, then back to the screen. You smiled at a stranger and they treated it like a disruption, and a simple greeting. The most basic act of human acknowledgement has become a strange thing to do. Now pay attention to what happens when people do interact. Watch how short the fuse has become. A cart blocks someone's path in a grocery store for 3 seconds and the reaction is profanity. A driver hesitates at a green light and the horn comes before the second is over. Someone asks a question at the wrong moment and the response carries a hostility that the situation never called for. Patience, the ordinary, unremarkable kind that used to govern how strangers moved around each other, has evaporated. In its place is something harder, shorter, meaner, an entitlement so strong that people do not even notice they are wearing it. And here is what is strange. When someone does something decent, holds a door, says thank you, looks another person in the eye and means it, the reaction is not normal appreciation. It is surprise, genuine surprise, as though basic human decency has become unusual enough to be remarkable. Think about what that means. We have reached a point where ordinary kindness startles people. But beneath the rudeness and the short tempers, there is something quieter happening. Something that most people feel but cannot describe. Empathy, the instinct to pause and consider how your words land on another person, has gone rare. People are no longer listening in conversations. They are waiting, or they are on their phones, or they are simply somewhere else behind their eyes while their mouth keeps moving. Relationships have become conditional. People show up when it benefits them and disappear the moment it does not. Loyalty has become a transaction. Ghosting is no longer strange, otashin, it is standard. When you talk to people now, there is a growing sense that you are essentially talking to yourself. Something used to exist between people, not something dramatic, not something that required effort or intention, something ordinary. A warmth, an ease, an unspoken agreement that we would be decent to each other for no reason other than that we are here, together, sharing the same spaces and the same time. It was so ordinary that nobody thought to give it a name. Nobody thought it needed protection. It is not there anymore. Not in one dramatic moment did it leave. It drained out slowly, gradually, the way a sound disappears so gently that you only notice the silence after it is complete. And the most unsettling part is not that it is gone. It is that most people have not noticed. They feel the absence. Every day they feel it. In the hollowness of their interactions, in the coldness that greets them in public, in the strange exhaustion of simply being around other people. They feel it. They just do not have a name for what is missing. But before we can understand what killed it, we need to see clearly what it looked like when it was still alive, because some people have already forgotten and many never knew. There was a time when neighbors knew each other's names, not because they were close friends, not because they shared interests or beliefs or backgrounds, simply because they lived near each other, and that was enough reason to speak. A nod in the morning, a short conversation about nothing in particular while checking the mail. The kind of interaction that nobody would remember by the end of the day, but that kept the air between people warm. Strangers talk to each other, not always, not about anything deep. But talks existed without suspicion. You could sit next to someone on a bench or in a waiting room, and a conversation could start over the weather, over a delay, over something completely meaningless. And it would feel natural. Nobody calculated what the other person wanted. Nobody braced for an agenda. It was just people filling the space between them with the sound of being human together. You could disagree with someone, genuinely disagree, about politics, about religion, about how the world should work. And then sit at the same table for dinner that evening without anyone treating the disagreement as a betrayal. Disagreement was a feature of conversation. It was how different minds sharpened each other. It was not a threat. It was not an emergency. It was ordinary. When someone was struggling, carrying too many bags, looking lost, stuck on the side of the road, the instinct was to help, not to evaluate first whether helping was worth the effort, not to weigh the risk, just to help. Because that was what people did. A compliment from a stranger was received with warmth, not with a guard going up. Kindness required no explanation. There was a background hum to all of this, a low, steady warmth that existed between people in public, in communities, in the ordinary flow of daily life. It was so constant and so unremarkable that nobody ever thought it was something that could disappear. If you were born in the 90s or early 2000s, you actually lived this. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So tell me honestly in the comments, am I lying? Was life not exactly like this back then? If you were born in the 90s or early 2000s, tell us in the comments, is this true or false? Harvard political scientist Robert Putnam spent years tracking this hum, measuring how often people joined community groups, visited neighbors, participated in shared civic life. What he found was that it had been fading for decades, quietly, beneath the surface, long before anyone noticed. The world people remember as normal was already in the process of coming apart. What happened in recent years did not create the collapse. It accelerated something that had been eroding for a long time. And slow erosion is the most dangerous kind, because it is the kind people adapt to without realizing what they have given up. That was what it looked like alive. Now we look at what killed it. Most people stop the conversation here. They see the rudeness. They feel the coldness. They notice the entitlement, the short fuses, the aggression that erupts over nothing. And they call it the problem. People have become rude. People have become selfish. People have lost their manners. That is the surface. And the surface is real. But it is also where almost every conversation about this stops. It lists the symptoms and moves on. Nobody cuts deeper. Nobody asks what is underneath the rudeness, beneath the coldness, below the hostility that has settled over ordinary human interaction like a fog that will not lift. We are going to cut deeper because what is underneath is far more disturbing than bad manners. The smartphone did not make people rude. It did something quieter and more permanent. It replaced the interactions through which human beings learned how to be human with each other. The small ones, the ones nobody thought about. Standing in a line and making eye contact with a stranger. Sitting in a waiting room and exchanging a few words with someone you would never see again. Tolerating an awkward silence in a conversation and staying in it until something real emerged. These were not social luxuries. They were the repetitions through which the brain developed its capacity to feel what another person was feeling. MIT psychologist Sherry Turkle spent decades studying this. What she found is precise and deeply unsettling. Empathy, the ability to sense what someone else is experiencing, is not a character trait you either have or you do not. It is a skill, and like any skill, it is built through practice. Our face-to-face conversation, and the kind that involves eye contact, pauses, emotional attunement, the discomfort of not knowing exactly what to say, is the primary engine through which that skill develops. When those conversations are replaced by screen-mediated interaction that requires no vulnerability, no tolerance of discomfort, no risk of rejection, the engine stops running. The capacity does not hold steady. It weakens, measurably, generationally. People did not choose to become cold. They are losing the ability to be warm. And that distinction changes everything, because a choice can be reversed in a moment. A lost capacity has to be rebuilt from nothing, and most people do not even know it has been lost. But the screen did not just replace real interaction. It trained people in a different kind of interaction entirely. The algorithm that governs what billions of people see every day does not reward depth or patience or kindness. It rewards reactivity, outrage, conflict, drama. Because those things generate engagement, and engagement generates profit. So every day, quietly, relentlessly, billions of people are being trained to be more reactive, more divisive, and more emotionally shallow, not by a teacher, not by a philosophy, by a machine that learned what keeps eyes on screens and optimized for nothing else. People are not developing who they are through lived experience anymore. They are absorbing it through content. And a self that was assembled from algorithmic consumption has the shape of a person without the depth of one. That is the second layer. Beneath it, there is a third, something cracked around 2020 that has not healed. The COVID-19 pandemic forced people into isolation and then normalized it. But the deeper damage was not the isolation itself. It was what the pressure revealed about people. How quickly neighbors turned on each other, how fast communities fractured, how willing people were to report, to shame, to distrust the people they had lived beside for years. And that revelation broke something in the social contract. The unwritten agreement that we would extend basic decency to each other, that we would assume good faith, that we would tolerate difference without treating it as a threat. The French sociologist Émile Durkheim had a word for what happens when those agreements dissolve. He called it anomie, a state where the shared rules that once governed how people behave toward each other have quietly disappeared, leaving nothing in their place. People are not being rude because they decided to abandon decency. They are navigating a social world in which the old map has been erased and no new one has been drawn. The chaos, the hostility, the suspicion that now saturates ordinary interaction. It is the sound of a society operating without a shared understanding of how to treat each other. And trust, once broken at this depth, does not come back easily. Because rebuilding trust requires the very thing that was shattered, the willingness to be vulnerable with other people. When that willingness is gone, our repair cannot even begin. But there is something deeper still, beneath the rewiring, beneath the fracture, beneath all of it. The anger, it is everywhere, in traffic, in grocery stores, in comment sections, in relationships, in the faces of strangers who react to nothing with a force that belongs to something enormous. Most people assume the anger is about whatever triggered it. The slow driver, the wrong word, the minor inconvenience. It is not. The triggers are just the nearest exit for something that has been building with no way out. What is actually building is grief. Grief for something lost that nobody has given a name to and nobody has given permission to mourn. People can feel that something fundamental about life has shifted, that they are surrounded by people and understood by none of them, or that the world has become loud and fast and relentless and strangely empty at the same time. But they cannot point to the loss. They cannot hold it up and say, "This is what I am missing." And grief that has no name and no outlet does not sit quietly. It turns, it hardens, it becomes rage, constant, directionless, disproportionate. The anger that people aim at each other every day is, most of the time, not about each other at all. It is the sound of millions of people mourning something they cannot identify. And alongside that grief, a paradox that Nassim Taleb would have recognized immediately. People have become simultaneously more fragile and less empathetic, more easily wounded by the smallest friction and less capable of seeing the wound they leave in others. Not because life has been too hard on them, because the culture systematically removed the very experiences, discomfort, disagreement, rejection, failure, that would have built the resilience to handle being human alongside other humans. The tolerance was never developed, so now people shatter at what should be ordinary. They escalate what should be minor. They treat a difference of opinion as an emergency, because their sense of who they are has become so brittle that any challenge feels like an attack on the whole structure. This is what is underneath the surface. A population that is neurologically rewired, socially fractured, emotionally unequipped, and quietly grieving, and does not have the language, the tools, or the shared understanding to do anything about it. And that diagnosis, as heavy as it is not the terrifying part. The terrifying part is what comes next. But before we get there, I want to hear from you because everyone watching this has felt this shift. You have seen it in the people around you, in strangers, everywhere. Something has changed in people and we all know it. So tell me, what do you think is the real cause of this? This coldness, this disconnection, the way people have become harder, more toxic, less human. What do you think did this to us? The terrifying part is not that people have become colder. It is not that empathy is declining. It is not that trust has fractured or that the old rules of decency have dissolved without replacement. The terrifying part is that we are getting used to it. The coldness is settling in as the new normal. the hollowness in conversations, the suspicion toward strangers, the transactional quality of relationships. These things are no longer shocking to most people. They are just how things are now. The absence that 10 years ago would have felt alarming has become the baseline. Not because anyone decided to accept it, but because when you live inside something long enough, you stop noticing it the way you stop noticing the hum of a refrigerator. It becomes the room you live in, and you forget there was ever a different room. And there is a cost to this adaptation that almost nobody is talking about. The people who still carry warmth, the ones who still hold doors, who still say hello to strangers knowing most will look away, who still listen when someone talks instead of waiting for their turn, who still extend kindness with no expectation of anything coming back. Those people are exhausting themselves. They keep reaching into a world that takes and returns nothing. They keep offering warmth and getting met with coldness, indifference, sometimes outright suspicion. And slowly, quietly, even they are beginning to pull back. Not because they stopped caring, because caring in a world that does not care back has a cost that eventually becomes too heavy to carry alone. And when the warm ones go quiet, when the last people who are still holding the fabric together decide they cannot keep holding it, then there is nothing left. The thing does not just weaken further, it disappears completely, so completely that the generation growing up right now will never know it existed. They will grow up inside the coldness and believe the coldness is normal. They will think that transactional relationships are simply how people work. That suspicion toward a kind stranger is reasonable. That the hollow feeling in every interaction is just what being alive feels like. They will not know that what they are living inside is not the way things are supposed to be. They will not miss what was lost because they will have no memory that it was ever there. That is what makes this terrifying. Not that something precious is dying, but that the death is becoming invisible. That the absence is being absorbed into normality so quietly that soon there will be no one left who remembers what was there before. And an absence that no one remembers is an absence that no one will ever try to restore. But the thing is not dead yet, it is close. It is damaged in ways that will take a long time to repair, if they can be repaired at all. But it is not gone, not completely, not yet. A woman comes out of a grocery store into a downpour nobody expected. Everyone is standing around, stranded, waiting for the rain to ease. A stranger walks up with an umbrella, offers to walk her to her car, carries her groceries, hands them to her, and disappears into the rain with nothing but a blessing. No audience, no camera, no reason except the old. The stubborn instinct that this is what people do for each other. Someone somewhere looks around at what is happening and makes a decision. 5 conversations with strangers every day. Not because someone told him to, because he can see the warmth leaving, and he has decided at 17 that he is not going to let it go without a fight. Another holds a door open. Nobody says thank you. They hold it open again the next day and the next, because they have made a quiet, private decision that this small act is their responsibility to keep alive. Whether anyone notices or not, whether anyone reciprocates or not, whether the world deserves it or not. These are not feel-good stories. They are life support. Small, stubborn, unrewarded acts of genuine human warmth being performed by people who can see exactly what is disappearing and have chosen quietly to keep carrying it anyway. The thing on the table is still breathing, but only because of them. And the first act, the one that matters before any other, is not grand. It is not a movement or a mission or a manifesto. It is simply this: refusing to go numb, refusing to accept the coldness as the way things are, refusing to let something this important die in silence while everyone looks down at their screens. And if you are still one of the good ones, still choosing to be kind, still trying to genuinely connect, still showing up for people in this cold and disconnected world, indicate right now by typing in the comments, "I still choose to be human because I want to see you, every single one of you. And I want to take this moment to say thank you. Thank you for still pushing forward even when the world around you has made it so easy to stop. Your kindness matters more than you know, even when nobody is telling you that. This is a growing community of people just like you, people who refuse to let this die, people who still believe that being human with each other is worth fighting for. Subscribe to the channel to join us. And share this video with others who are either still pushing this forward or who may have forgotten what it means to be human. Let us wake them up together.